La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. Welcome back to La Lanterna podcast. It's back at our episode number. I lost the count.
I think it might be at 10, maybe? This could be 10.
We're at 10. This is amazing. We're at round number 10. I couldn't even remember. I guess that's because it's the birthday. I don't know what it is.
I know. It's gone by really fast. I can't believe I also can't believe it's almost the season too. That's incredible. Feels like the season just ended.
Well, I know you're right. So what is it? Let me think here quickly. So we're about a month and 6 weeks. So 14th of August, we have Venezia Genoa.
Yep.
So we're away. It's a away match for the first of the Serie B opener, and then we have the Coppa Italia. Not to forget about the Coppa Italia with Benevento, which is going to be, I think, the weekend before that. I just can't find the date.
That's exactly right. I think it's August 8th is the date, if I'm not mistaken.
August 8th. So August 8th means we're basically a month away. So that means 4 weeks away. Let's call it 4 weeks away. And Genoa is going to be finally started. I don't care where in Serie B, honestly, Matt. I'm dreading to watch Genoa again. I don't know how to say that. It's just like this rosso blue, I don't know, desire. What do you want to call it? Am I just talking by myself, or is it that's for you too as well?
I mean, I told some of the Genoa Club New York people this too, because they were kind of like, are you dreading the match all week like we are? Like, are you just like waiting in agony for this thing? And
that's Italian guys, right?
Just get all the Italian guys. Yeah. And like, for me, it's not the same. And I'm maybe like not quite as jaded yet. Every single season I've watched them play, they've almost been relegated. So I suppose I should be more jaded than I am. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm starting to get that sort of same sense of like, are we prepared enough? Are we sure we know what we're doing? Is this going to come out well? Are we going to have a good account of the season? I mean, there's really only one success, and that's being promoted to Serie A. Like, there's no other way they're going to look back and say, oh yeah, that was a good season. Like if Genoa are back in Serie B next season, it's failure. I mean, that's the reality of it. But I think we will be fairly well set up for success. So maybe that's part of what's clouding my judgment, is it seems like we should be standing out from most of this pack. But also, I've not really watched the cadet season, so we'll see how it goes.
It's funny that you say that. Being Italian, I'm a little bit more, against being jinxing and stuff like that. So I'm gonna say,
I know.
I don't want to think. Right, I'm touching my amulet right now, but no, jokes on the side. I don't want to think. I mean, I want to know that we are going to be leading this championship this season as a leader. I don't want to think that far because I don't want to jinx it, I guess, ultimately. But I guess that's, as you said that absolutely right. We need to be going through. Obviously, the desire is to be winning the season, the championship as winning the Serie B title, the number 7 title, by the way. So we are already the leaders of Serie B with 6 titles, and we would be heading towards the 7th if we win it. And below us, I think we have Palermo and Atalanta with 5, or we're at 7. Anyways. It's like we're the leaders, and there's the one title below. We have Brescia and
right there too, right?
and Brescia. No, Palermo, I think, one step down, and then there's also Atalanta, which is obviously not in the Serie B title race this year, obviously.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, it's definitely it has to be the top two. Obviously, my desire is to show that the difference of towards the league itself, to show that we are the leaders. I would be still okay with the second spot. I would not be okay with the third to the eighth, based on the fact that it's going to be falling into that lottery style of playoffs.
I would be very disappointed, honestly, if we finished third, or anywhere in the playoff positions, because this is really, we're talking about almost a rebuild of the team. And yes, it's going to be a difficult season. We all know that. We're all acknowledging that. But I don't think we can really say confidently that this rebuild is going in the right direction if we are squeaking out of Serie B. And honestly, it's going to be very difficult to get out of there regardless if you make that playoff. So, yeah.
And mind you, I want to rephrase what we have all said all along, and I'm hearing all throughout, that they're not having the courage to say it, but I think that this is probably one of the most competitive Serie B seasons ever.
Yep.
They're not ready to say that for different reasons, mind you, which is fine, because I can't speak for Serie B 40 years ago, 60 years ago, or whatnot. But, with the likes of Palermo, as we mentioned, Brescia, Bari, Parma, like Pisa even themselves, or whatnot. And I'm sorry if I'm missing out a whole bunch of others. I remember even someone that was saying that they were actually saying that for the title, not for the title, but for the opportunities, for the chances of fighting for promotions, they're talking about 12.
Wow.
So that's huge.
That's pretty big.
Huge. And not to mention, obviously, Cagliari and Venezia, who came down with us too, right? So, that's huge. I'm sure, and here we are. We don't know if we have people that are from Serie A that are going to be listening to us, even though we have a guest, which is a Juventus fan that's going to come up shortly. But nevertheless, even though they're not following Serie B, and Serie B is always a little bit, sadly, in a way, and I feel a little bit for it, because when you are in Serie A, you're not really following much Serie B. But ultimately, it definitely needs a lot more promotion. It definitely needs a lot more, shout outs and whatnot. I'm hoping that, especially now with streaming and so on, it gets a lot more visibility, because when we as in Genoa, we were the last ones when we last came out of Serie B. So that was 2006. Streaming was definitely not there. Like type of international television was not there. And when we came up, it was Napoli, Genoa, and Juventus. So that was another great Serie B as well.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. It's important, and we definitely have to hit the mark.
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy season, but it's also one that I think it's really promotion or bust, and really, frankly, we're expecting to have that championship. So, so speaking of which, so I know part of this too goes hand in hand with the direction of the club and where we're going. And there's some news that broke this week with our sporting director. Obviously, Johannes Spors has been the director since the 777 transition. Some news that he is now not necessarily moving on, I guess, but he's going to be taking that role across all of 777's properties. 777's properties.
I'm glad you actually worded out that way, because, as you know, because I saw your comments on it, I hated very much this article from one of the Genovese journalists. And I'm not going to say names now, but I guess I can. But anyways, it doesn't matter. From La Repubblica. And essentially, it was like downgrading it's just like how you word certain things. And that's the part that I dislike. So you cannot say that the general manager moved on, or he's out of the realm of Genoa. No, he has been promoted. I like that. It's like the half is glass full or half empty. The glass is half full. The guy has been promoted to a larger position. He's going to be overlooking all the teams, including Genoa. So the 777 Partners Sporting, whatever it's called, their identity. So that's the liking of the Belgian team, the
Standard Liège. How do you say it? Standard
Liège, exact. Standard Liège, the Paris FC or whatever
Red
it's
Star.
called.
Yeah.
The Red Star, thank you. I apologize for that. But the Vasco da Gama and whatnot, right? So the group of the 777 Partners Sporting Group or football group or whatever it's called, it's a huge undertaking. It's a huge, I guess, project that the 777 Partners are partaking.
Mhm.
And the fact of knowing that our general manager now has been promoted to this bigger role that will be the whole hierarchy eye on top of Genoa, it's amazing. And everybody was complaining about the fact of us having a GM that was from Germany. Oh, he's not Italian. He doesn't understand. Well, you know what? F you. Now we have a sports director that is Italian.
Yeah.
So don't complain anymore, right? Yeah. So Orsolini is the new sports director for Genoa.
Yep.
And correct me if I'm wrong, he was the scouting something from Juventus.
I think he actually, if this title was correct, it's sort of hilarious. Apparently he was like the loan manager, like the player loan manager, right, at Juventus, which is like, well, he must know us pretty well then, I guess, if that was his title. But that, I think already that was part of the whole thing, I have to assume. And that's what it sounded like some of the press comments were too, that he and Spurs already had a relationship. They sort of had an understanding a little bit. And obviously, I mean, this person's his own person. He's got an idea for what he wants to do. But I think there was a trust there, it seemed like, already between Spurs and Ottolini. And there were some comments I saw about, oh, well, you know, for anybody that wasn't pro Spurs, which, as you mentioned, there are a fair few folks out there who feel that way for whatever reason. I don't think this is good news for that group. I think this is, you know, we're getting Spurs' overall direction going down in this case. And I think Ottolini will be given a chance to make his own decisions. I don't think he's going to just be, you know, a puppet or something like that. But the model that Spurs and company were trying to introduce seems like they're actually expanding it. So it's not something that's going to be, I don't think, a change of strategy.
Well, you know better than I do that when you have like an operations type of management that is hiring, you know, like his puppets. I shouldn't say puppets. That's not fair to say, but let's say, you know, his under, you know, his new employees and whatnot. He's obviously going to say, listen, this is the realm. This is the plan. This is the overlooking, you know, direction that we're taking. Are you in it or you're out? Are you in it? Then I am calling you, because it's not that we're going to have interviews with 1,000 people. I'm calling you because you are the one that I'm interested. Actually, Ottolini was actually someone that the news, the rumors were surfacing for quite a bit. And it only happened official now, apparently, because there were some discussions that needed to be made about, I guess, different back and forth, and most likely what you said too about the fact that Ottolini wanted a little bit. I'm just guessing, obviously, but wants obviously some you know, how can I say, like freedom, but at the same time with direction that is from a bigger, higher realm that they're going to be following.
Yeah, I don't completely understand quite yet, like how the role functions with an overarching, because I'm just less familiar with this. I'm curious how like other groups that are like this, like I guess really it's Citigroup or the Red Bull kind of whatever their name is. But I don't know if they actually have like a head person across all the satellite. I guess they must, because that's kind of the idea. But I think he's still going to have a pretty good amount of autonomy. It's just going to maybe be within that same sort of, maybe there's principles or guide rails or something that we're generally using as we're thinking about stuff.
Well, I want to see it like a classic, typical enterprise where you have like a CEO or some sort of like a regional manager.
Yeah.
And then you are one of the different teams underneath that regional manager.
Yeah.
So in this case, the regional manager is like the only one. And then you have the different managers that report to the region. Well, in this case, the only manager. And that would be, even though it's not called a general manager, it's called like a, what was it called? Like for sports, it was like a international sports director or whatnot.
Yeah, you know.
And Orsolini is the actual sporting director for Genoa.
Yeah.
No, I think this is positive news. Those complainers that were talking about the fact of not having Italian, those have been put to hush because we have someone that has been out there for a while, and especially they have been touching and talking on both Italian and international scene. So even though he was not necessarily, even though I think he had a different experience also before that, with a foreign team, but nevertheless, he definitely has that great experience, especially coming from a Juventus type of management, which is, always to look up towards, at least from an Italian perspective. And I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think it's positive. And with that, I mean, just about the same day, we had some news kind of come in too on the transfer side. I guess some of this was rumored for a few weeks now, and now it's finally confirmed. But Guven Yalçın, I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce his last name, but forward from Besiktas in Turkey, officially a Genoa player, passed his medical, everything, signed, sealed, delivered. Have you had a chance to check this guy out? He's kind of exciting from the clips that I had seen.
No, the clips are definitely like super marking him as a potential great experienced player, even though, still on his, he's still 23, so he's not.
Yeah, he's younger.
For what I read is like he's just straight like center forward. He has capacity of being on the wings as well. He is an underperformer based on the fact of his experience, but he has so much potential that what they're saying is he's someone that has been kicking his feet, kicking around, and still didn't have a chance really to show off.
Yeah.
And what we're hoping is definitely this is his chance.
Yeah. I mean, if you look back at some of his seasons before this past season, like you might scratch your head a little bit, because I think he did play for Lecce in Serie B actually the season before last, and I don't think he made all that many appearances, like maybe like 11 appearances or something. But last year I think he had something like 6 goals or something like that. But you could, if you watch some of the clips, you can see some of the creativity, good movement on the ball, actually some good kind of combination play that he seemed to have. It sounds there's some kind of thoughts that I don't know how much of this is real or in Blessing's mind, but having him and Coda together as like the strike partnership and just have him be more of like the interplay type of a player or something. I don't know exactly how that's going to work out, but we know we needed attackers. This is a guy who seems like he's got skill, and he seems complementary to some of the other players that we have. So let's hope we get some good performances from him this season.
Right. And we're recording today, which is Thursday, and it'll most likely go online on Friday.
Yeah.
So Friday is actually, which is for us tomorrow, but for when we go online, it's going to be the day of. We're going to have the actual first official friendly.
That's right.
Against Mallorca. It's somewhere in Austria. I can't remember now, but I think because they changed also the location. But nevertheless, that's an important showing. It's going to be free broadcast. I'm doing free advertising here for Hellbiz, but it's going to be free showing on Hellbiz, which will give us an interesting look over the team itself. Mind you, what I want to always say on the summer matches is it's not important the result, because what the managers and what the coaches are actually looking for are actually the not the result, the final result itself, but putting together the schematics and and the plays that they have been looking at the different areas, like let's focus now on the defense with this type of player, but I'm going to put the benches on for the midfield. I don't know, so it's what I'm trying to say is like, it's really not important. Someone might say, am I being conservative? That's the fact of, okay, waiting on the fact of if they're going to be losing or not. It doesn't matter to me. I just want to see, it's like a training session within a match itself, and that's what's important. This is the first season we're going to have Blessin from the get-go, so it's important that he puts his footprint on the entire next season entirely.
That's kind of what I'm most curious about is, do you see sometimes managers trying different things out in matches like this, and we might see some I guess this is probably typical for most preseason matches, but like in the second half, we might even be looking at a very different lineup for a lot of the players that are getting time and experience and all of those things. But we've not really, I suppose there haven't been a whole huge amount of signings that have been made over the transfer window, but we're now starting to see, we've got now Blessin's going to have had time with the team since January or so, whenever he came in. It'll be interesting to see if he's looking at trying out different things, different combinations. I know we kind of were scratching our heads too, even like in central midfield, we're going to look at like 3 central midfielders. So yeah, I mean, maybe we'll get a preview of some of those things, and you're right, like the actual performances themselves, so long as we're not losing 4-0 like Everton just did to an MLS team earlier this week, I think we'll probably be not losing too much sleep over it. So
no, that's important. We have also, as we mentioned also on last episode, there's a whole bunch of exercises that are happening on the outstream. We talked briefly about it, but I'll let you do the honors about the 2 that actually came official that are an outbound.
Yes, so Petrelli and Callo. I think at one point Callo, actually, there was some buzz about him maybe sticking with the side, but they both moved on. I think both to Serie B teams. Kind of, I don't know. I mean, I think this sort of seems like a natural next step for both of these players. I'm not sure if you felt too bothered by them moving on, but I think you kind of shake their hand, have them go, they get their playing time, continue with their careers, and they're not going to get a whole lot of playing time in our squad anyway. I don't think it's not something to be too upset about.
No, of course not. No, now Kala is a midfielder, so that was kind of almost expected.
Yeah.
But then also there are also a lot of other players that actually did not got called up for the summer retreat. So
yeah,
which were expected. So similarly, that would be like Maximovic, the likes of Maximovic and whatnot. So, these are like players that we were expecting not to be called up, and nothing to be too much surprised about that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you thought about the Bod hiring call-up group as a whole. You're right. There wasn't too many surprising names that were not on there. I think we kind of knew the players that are hopefully, like if we saw I think there'd be much more of a surprise if Maximovic was back next season than if he was actually moving on from.
Actually, last rumors, a lot of people were giving him for Lecce, but apparently he might be going to Turkey.
Yeah, I heard the Lecce rumors too, but it sounded like something had broken down there somewhere or something like that. But
if it was ever true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's also fair. I mean, it's also this time where maybe we do see some transfers and some still players even who are going on, who are in the squad, hopefully. I mean, that's the one thing I kind of hope we don't see too much of, is players we're taking with us to Austria. If we're moving them on, I guess I must have to think that we're going to have a replacement for them already lined up. And looking down the squad, I know there's some concerns about this, but even with the players we're taking to Austria now, maybe I'm a little bit naive with this. I feel like we have a little bit of a mixture of players who've brought back on loan, like Gigallo, who played in Serie B last season, players who have already had that experience in Serie A, or some of the newer guys who are more seasoned, like Ilsanker or like Koda. And so I kind of see a little bit of a squad already with who we have in Bot Herring. I don't know. I know there's a lot of consternation too about we haven't really signed that many players. Are we really setting ourselves up for success? Again, I don't want to jinx anything, so I won't say it any further. But I'm curious, Fabry, how you think, and if you feel like there's going to be a lot more activity happening between now and the beginning of the season in about a month.
Well, one thing we didn't mention, there was an interesting press conference between the CEO Blaskets and the general manager, which now is like the international sports director, which was obviously sports. So what they spoke about was that majority of the transfer market was complete, but that did not mean that it's going to be sitting still. There was still a whole entire month, because at that point, that was like 4 days ago,
right,
of still the market happening, and they're not planning on sitting there. Obviously, if there are going to be opportunities or interesting movements, they're going to be actually acting upon those. Hence, this the last mention that you talked about, Yalcin from Turkey. Yeah. Having said that, the most focus, they said, or at least anyways, Spores was saying, was going to be on the outgoing. We know that there were 60, 70 players in a grand total. Obviously, among these, including the ones that did not got called up, are a whole bunch of youth players. So they are going to be most likely like loaned out, for an example. Right. This is my guess, but for example, Buxa, which is like that young striker. Yeah, I most likely thinking they're not going to be selling him, but they're just going to be placing him somewhere just to get great experience, which is what they need. Right. That's what players need. Whether you put them in Serie C or in Serie B, it's important for them to get minutes on their legs and just get out there. Ranjo was another one, but then you have also the likes of obviously Hernani and Maximo, which are like very heavy, right, similar to other players that we got rid of. That need to leave, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah. So how do I see that? Do they, as they mentioned, they're going to still be looking on certain areas. I think there's going to be still, like, the one forward just came, and I think mostly we're going to see either wingers or what they call in Italian trequartisti, which is like more your Amiri type of style of play.
Yeah.
Because I have to add to that in another separate interview after that, we had Blessin talking about, there was a question finally, mind you, but about what's his style of play. Is he going to play like a 5-3-2-1, a 5-2-3-1, or whatever that may be? And I'm sorry, but he was all over the map. In that part, it a little bit ticked me a little bit, based on the fact that, you know, I'm not saying that I do like what he says, the adaptive and the chameleon type of approach, where it depends on the game, the style might change, and I'm all for that, and maybe that's what he's meaning. And I don't want to come back to what Thiago Motta once said, and we're playing this 7, whatever he was saying, the 7-1-2-1 or something. I can't remember that. But anyways, he talked about a 5-3-2-1, but it also can turn into a 3-5-2-1 if you move up and whatnot. Or there's also the 4-4-2, and where the mid-man is not going to be necessarily in line. But then, and this was the last one, which is a little bit, not that it ticked me, but it's like, what does that mean? He talked about the 4-2-2-2, which I get it. It's like the diamond, instead of being a diamond, it's a square, I guess. But I don't know. It's interesting. It would be interesting to see how that turns out. And that's what I'm interested to see against Mallorca, totally, and or next week also against Lazio.
Yeah, that's the most intriguing thing, is seeing how we're going to line up. And this movement thing is interesting too, because like it seems more and more that a lot of teams are adopting this kind of adaptive sort of formation style. I just hope that we have some sort of playing identity. And I think you're right that if there's a gap that we have, I don't know if you feel this way too, but for me, it feels like if there's a particular position we need to hone in on more, I'm not sure we have exactly that attacking midfielder kind of person yet. Like I was kind of hoping a person of Yautson's caliber would be that player, but he's really more of a forward. He's not really. You're not going to put him as.
No, you're absolutely right. Essentially, what everybody's saying is like we have all the incontristi of the world. The incontristi are like your likes of, like
Sturaro, like those type of guys.
Exactly. Thank you. But we need more like that regista type of thing, the one that is the Amiri style, that is also attacker, not necessary, but someone that is not the incontrista, but it's actually the one that is, you know what, I'm touching this ball, but I already know that once I touch it, it's going to go that way. That's like where your trequartista in the modern language of soccer is called, or the old wild style is called like the regista type of thing. And I think that's what we're still waiting on, what that new, that new name might be.
Yeah.
Having said that, I'm going to go all the way back now. So I'm hyped to see what that name might be, because I think we need someone on the trequartista or on the registas type of thing. But I saw this article which was talking about Blessing's interview. Then we'll probably move on to our special guest. But what do you think about? So Blessing said, the question was, is it Martinez or is it Semper? Is it talking about the hierarchies here of who was first and who was not? Sure. Or before the championship, are you going to be deciding? And his answer was, before the championship starts, I will decide who is the number one. They have both great qualities. It's up to them to demonstrate in the friendlies. Ooh.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that either. I mean, so before you said that last part, what I was going to give Blessing some credit for is he probably has not really seen these guys. I mean, I guess Martinez he may be familiar with from his time at Leipzig, but I don't know if he really saw him that much then or not, because he was also there like many years ago, and he would have probably been like an academy player at that time. But he wouldn't have probably seen a whole lot of Semper because obviously he was on loan last season. So if it's like, hey, I want to evaluate during our training and whatever and see who's doing better, fine. How they are playing within the friendlies is kind of questionable. I guess it's the only real chance that maybe if you're taking the lens that like a goalkeeper really is made with the lights on. I just don't know how you can make that decision from a friendly game. I mean, sure, it'll be on Helbiz, but is the pressure really going to be on them like it is walking into the
it is
going into something else?
Matt, it is. It's like, I think a lot of players had their line. They were up against Lucerne, and it doesn't really matter. Yeah. But we Genoa lost 2-0, right? But I think it was mostly based on what I read. Anyways, it was a lot about like the rotation was enormous, and it was a lot about show who you are, and this is your last call, essentially. Like essentially, a lot of them had their path already been taken. Mm-hmm. For example, we have all of these players starting with a C and it's like only four letters, like Kala, which we just talked about, which is gone. Yep. Koda, which is the one that we just got. And then we also have that forward also from Cosenza, which was a surprise to everyone. Caso, to everybody, was because all Serie B was raving about him. And then at the end, I think, who was it? Benevento, that just came up and said, okay, I'll take him, 1.1 million, and it's gone. So what I'm trying to say is like, some people don't know about him and said, well, who cares? Others said, well, everybody's raving about it. Why did we only sell it for $1 million?
Right.
And the truth is somewhere in between. We don't know what else has been happening there. I mean, ultimately, you also heard about this interview with our CEO, Blaskets. So why don't you talk us about that one?
Yeah, well, I think that was the comments, right, that he had kind of had about really the team being 90% done was one of the things that was printed, right? And I think there's some questions like, were things done behind closed doors? Like, is that kind of what?
There's a lot happening.
So like, who knows if he was referring to things that they've already done that have not been public or whatever. I think that's probably a lot of Griffone's hope around the world, that that's what he was referring to, and not the things that we already know. But yeah, that was one of the big kind of pot stirring comments this week was the, seems like we're pretty much done. And again, I will not go too much farther on this point, but I do think that there's maybe more within the squad than we think we have, only because we're getting a lot of people back who've already had experience in this league. And I think we're bringing our complement of having players who really do belong in Serie A. And obviously we're not breaking the bank open for any of our signings right now, which is exactly the right thing to do. We've got to be in good financial health going into, if we do get promoted going into Serie A, we have to be in a place where we can properly kind of transition. So.
No, that's true. One last thing, and this is still worrying me, because until I see, I guess Benevento is our first real call, because obviously the match against Mallorca and Lazio are mostly about, rotation, tweaking and making, exactly. So it's like, getting better, more minutes on the players' legs and so on. But definitely, I guess I'm thinking here. That's why I'm as hesitating. But I guess against Benevento is going to be the first awakening call to see what's the real Genoa 2022-23.
Yeah.
Let me touch upon one more thing before we leave for the guest. But Castore, people, calm down. No, I'm kidding. I'm agitated too. It's like, I don't know really what's happening. From the marketing and the store, they're actually saying that they are not able to match, to meet the expectations or the dates that they were originally taught or dealt with or planned for. Other people obviously are speculating around that, saying perhaps based on the fact that now we're seeing that before they left for Bad Herring, they were all wearing, fruit of the loom or, like that's stuff from their own
closet. Weren't they even wearing Kappa shirts for a second that just didn't have Kappa marks on them? And then now that they're back to having the Kappa.
Right. So as soon as I was going to say that exactly, once they departed for the trip, they all are wearing again the Kappa wear, and which still has the old logo.
Yeah.
Right. So it's old stuff. But I've been talking about it with a whole bunch of people in the different chats and whatnot. Ultimately, we're also talking a huge organization. Look at Spores, also new hire and so on.
Yeah.
But the fact of a large organization that is restructuring entirely everything, perhaps marketing wanted to put their own. The focus is not necessarily entirely on the marketing or on certain aspects of marketing.
Yeah.
And I guess they were trying to put a mark on the fact of having a new technical sponsor, and perhaps Kappa just spoke up and say, hey, wait a minute, with Preziosi, I had this contract up until then. You're going to have to honor it until the end. And, we don't really know what's happening out there. So it's useless to point fingers and say, well, look how ridiculous we look like and whatnot. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of, people are moving left, right, and center. And we'll just have to be a little bit more patient because this restructuring is happening. And, and I'm going through restructuring actually through my own company where I work for. And it is hurtful on certain aspects and it's great on others. Like it depends on, I guess, the experience, I guess, on the flexibility, I guess, on the freedom and a whole bunch of stuff. Like, it's there's a lot more complexity behind than what we see.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to sum it up. It's who knows what the hell's happening. And I will leave one thing for maybe not the conspiracy theorists out there, but for people that want to noodle on something a little bit. I did notice that the background for the store, which has been like a coming soon web page for like a month, I think, or something.
Okay.
It's slightly changed So before, and you might remember this from some of the graphics on social media or something, there was like this, there was kind of like this, not like a lightning bolt, but there's like this little jut out where like the red came out a little bit and then came back down or something. And now it's a little bit more even, but you can kind of see it looks like paint and almost like the walls of the Marase with like the Russell blue paint on either side, which is a slightly
Okay,
different.
I get it. I get it. Like when they first came out with the new logo, it had this site sort of like overlapping,
Yeah. There's
right?
like
And now, actually, now that you said, I pulled it up, and it did definitely did change, and it's showing like it almost like a brushed
yes.
overlap one color over the other.
Yeah. So
what are you trying to say with that, Matt?
I don't know. I mean, maybe this is the design for the new kit. Maybe I mean, who knows how this happened. It could have been, if you want to really give them credit, and this is all just speculation for fun at this point, but you know, there's a world where usually these things get made like a year in advance. If already Castor was on the minds of 777 when they came in, I think that'd probably be a weird thing for them to already know in like November, but maybe they did. This whole thing that happened around the Marase, I think, happened slightly later than that time, but not a whole lot. I can't remember exactly when that happened. So I don't know. Maybe they got inspired by something. Maybe there's a change in design. Maybe this background is actually sort of a calling forward to what the background of the new home shirt's going to look like. It could be kind of a cool connection, and it would seem pretty tied into how they've been thinking about club activity and promotion. So who knows? Oh, one last thing before we go. I think we need to talk about Grandanata Sud. Have you been?
Oh, that's an amazing.
Isn't that cool?
No, you're right. It's so cool. So let me just explain or jump in whenever you want. But essentially, the Gradinata Nord has always been sold out. I mean, it was almost like a given fact that once the season tickets were being addressed and whatnot, obviously they had the rights to get the new seasons before it was open to the open public and whatnot. So it was, in my opinion, it was a given that you would never be able to get in there.
Right.
But it was so amazing, this initiative to say, listen, Gradinata Nord is all sold out. So why don't we get Gradinata Nord 2 or the Sud, almost like, I'm thinking like a Napoli, where they have Curva A and Curva B, where you have two different tifoseria organizzata, which is like, you know, like the organized official, I don't know, fanship, ultra, whatever you want to call it. And I don't know, it's just like amazing.
It's pretty cool. It's cool to see it and see already there's a bunch of traction too. It's like there are different groups that are already popping up, at least on social or something. They're trying to make claim in the Sud, and just the passion to fill the stadium out. I think I'm so excited to see like our first home match and just compare that against Samp, because I feel like we're going to outdraw them by like 10,000 or something ridiculous.
Well, okay, honestly, it's always like, this is the last, but ultimately I can't remember now. Forgive me, I'm not prepared for this, but I'm still waiting for the better numbers. But I'm looking at the numbers for the season tickets and so on for Serie A. Above us, we only have like the major elite teams, like obviously Milan and Inter are the top.
Right.
Then I think Juventus did not even release their numbers, so we don't know yet.
Okay.
But I think just above us is, help me out here, maybe Napoli, maybe Roma. No, Roma.
That's crazy.
And then it's us. Like, okay, if not third, if not fourth, we're fifth or sixth. But we're in City B, guys, you know? And it's not still the end. So obviously there can be more surprises out there, especially with teams with larger cities and so on. But anyways, okay, let's go to our infinite commercial break that still needs to be changed, but we're still supporting that. And we'll get back with our great new guest, and we'll talk all about him once we're back.
My name is Fabrizio Cardone, and I approve this message.
Welcome back after our beautiful, amazing short break that we had, as you know, as I mentioned to you, Matt.
Commercial, huh? a great commercial.
We have to change that commercial.
I know.
Anyways, so we're back to introduce our great super guest for this week, episode 10. So it's like a birthday for us. And I'll actually leave it to Joe to introduce himself and talk all about who he is and what he's all about. Welcome, Joe.
Welcome.
So, hi, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to meet you guys. I mean,
Likewise.
You guys have interacted with me on social media through Genoa Club of Toronto, but it's great to actually talk to you guys almost not face to face directly, but even just seeing your face, it's good to see.
Well, no, you're actually right, Joe. Like people don't know that because this is a podcast, so it's just only audio. But for us, we are actually seeing each other visually. Like if it was it's like a conference call or a Zoom meeting or whatever you want to call it. So at least we have this opportunity. And you're right, we have been connecting and chatting a whole bunch of times. Actually, you and I, Joe, through my channel at the Genoa Club Toronto. And actually, I'm going to open it up back to you to talk about your page.
Oh, to write that. Okay, so I run Calcio Fan Blogs, and basically what Calcio Fan Blogs is it's just a blog to help try and grow the community of calcio lovers in Canada. And actually recently, because of the emergence of how good Canadian soccer has been lately, I also somewhat talk about that as well.
There you go.
Not too much in depth, but enough.
That's perfect.
Fair enough. And
absolutely, you can actually find me on Instagram at Calcio Fan Blogs, on Twitter at Calcio Fan Blogs 1, and you can follow my Facebook page or like it, and it's Calcio Fan Blogs.
That's awesome. No, you're absolutely right. Like, I'm sorry, Matt, just a small Toronto thing here. We have to not only follow our passion for our calcio in Serie A or Serie B for me in this case, anyways, for me and Matt for this case, but it's good also to root a little bit about your home city. So for us, TFC, before we had the likings of Giovinco and whatever he brought to the city.
Yeah.
And now with the Italian trio, it's just like something else, right?
Pass it to the Italians, exactly.
Yeah, that's
Pass
exactly
it to
right.
the Italians. No, that's actually talking a little bit about MLS as well. We might as well, if you don't mind, Matt. But the fact of having TFC having signed these three Italians, like Joe, what do you think? I mean, I have an idea, but what do you think? Why did that happen?
Well, because from what I've read, obviously, I mean, you don't know what information is real or not, but I'm pretty sure it's because Giovinco's agents, when he came in 2015, D'Amico basically was able to hook, Toronto FC up with all these other player agents. So Insigne's agent, Bernardeschi, Criscito. And so that's why I think that's a big part of why all these Italian players are coming to Toronto now. And obviously D'Amico had good stuff to say about Toronto FC. That's why I honestly think these players are here.
That's for sure. I remember interviews throughout from Giovinco. He never said one bad word about Toronto. Actually, he raved about it just to say, whatever intentions you have and whatnot, this is a great city to be there. People are going to treat you amazingly. I'm not going to say anything bad about any other teams within the MLS, but hey, it's Toronto.
Exactly. And it's hilarious because Giovinco, whenever he talks about Toronto, he never talks about Toronto, like you said. And he bashes the Italian Federation more than anything for not selecting him in his time in Toronto. So he doesn't even bash Toronto. He's just it's great, but I didn't get selected for the Italian national team basically every interview when he talks about Toronto FC.
Well, you're absolutely right. Hopefully also with this trio and the newcomers from also different leagues and not only Serie A, MLS is going to be seen a little bit better. Obviously, he's never, and we said that, Matt, a few episodes ago that we're never going to see, and we're never going to expect even MLS to be at any levels, at least at the of the top four teams, leagues.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that does not mean that the MLS is now, I'm going to say it, the Farmers League, but
no,
like a
for
bad
sure.
league, what I mean, right?
I see your point for sure. But for me, I've even seen, like, compared to when Jovinko was there 2015 compared to now, it's a completely different league, in my opinion. It's just like, it's night and day difference. The overall quality is a lot better. I mean, the speed of the attackers, just everything is just overall so much better than even when Jovinko came in 2015. It's crazy.
The recruiting definitely seems much better. Like I think we figured out like the South American pipeline, and also there's a lot of really good North American talent, of course, coming through, and either from Canada, Mexico, or the U.S. that are kind of powering some of that stuff too. I mean, I remember watching Pirlo play for New York City like probably 5 years ago.
Yeah,
and he was so disinterested. He was just like, he
yeah,
was not like watching Pirlo at all. He was just like back passing it, just like, I guess I'm just here. I'm just standing in Yankee Stadium. This is weird. And it was not. I mean, David Villa was scoring goals like crazy, but nothing was. It didn't feel like you were watching a really competitive match. It feels like it's changing, and you're getting more kind of different styles of play too. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Joe, I love what you're doing too with the blog. I think we're trying to kind of do the same thing with our podcast of bringing Italian football in one way. In our way, it's really more genuine, but we're talking as much about Italian football as
for sure.
Especially to folks that are English speaking in North America. So it's cool that you guys are sharing that same passion.
Oh, thank you.
So super important, right? So as long as, I mean, especially for North America, which is actually one of the things that Benedictski said in one of his interviews, where he was, I guess it was definitely like a line that he had to say, but he was, interested for the fact of the passion for so many sports, for the likes of NFL or basketball or baseball or whatnot. So he's like, this is a city to go for. Obviously, NFL is not pretty much in Canada, but nevertheless, it's like still it's a step down compared to all the larger sports for North America. But the followership, if you compare it, I'll never forget always one of my ex-colleagues, and we had this fight, and this conversation where he was saying the biggest he was saying the biggest sports event in the world is the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
What are you talking about? Super Bowl? You know what you're talking about? Of course I am. It's like the biggest. Okay, go and get the numbers. And if you compare it to the final of the FIFA World Cup, you're just gonna like cry for the amount of people. Yeah,
it's not the same.
And then exactly, like from half a million or half a billion to over a billion. I know. It was like you couldn't compare it. He's like, okay, I bow to you because honestly, I did not know. And, it was funny because the perception is really relative to what you're used to.
I think one of the interesting things I saw, I don't know if you guys saw it, Arsenal were playing Orlando City yesterday, I think.
Yeah.
And the stadium was all like Orlando City fans. Like, that's not how it used to be. It used to always be just everyone's kind of wearing their kit from like, oh, I'm a Man United fan or I'm a Chelsea fan. It's like actually mainly Orlando City fans that seemed like supporting their team against Arsenal. I was like, that's cool. Like, this is a change. Like, people are actually, we're building communities here. So
for sure. I think in the US, they've done a good job. The US teams have done a really good job, especially, Orlando City's not that new, but some of the newer teams, especially like Cincinnati, Minnesota, Atlanta, I think have done a great job of marketing in their cities. What I think the problem is in Toronto is that we have so many sports teams that are already established.
Yeah.
And then the fact is Toronto FC is just, unfortunately, it's not like a European soccer team.
Right.
So the problem is, like, if you're trying to grow Toronto FC and you're trying to grow the Canadian Premier League, which not a lot of people know what that is, who are you going to cater to? And I guess you have to cater to fans of European soccer teams who also are going to cater to, right? So it's tough in Toronto for Toronto FC because, a lot of soccer fans here are, Serie A fans, Premier League fans, Bundesliga fans. But I feel like in the US, they've done a better job at marketing their local MLS teams.
I think you're right. There's probably something to your point on like the small market kind of appeal, because even like the Minnesota thing with like the loon on like the badge and stuff, and it's like, oh, this is Minnesota. This is like, I get it, you
It's
know.
cool.
So yeah, it takes time.
Sure.
It takes time, but as Joe said earlier on, like even from the likes of the times of from Jovinko to 2015 to today, and even if you think about when actually when I first founded the Genoa Club Toronto back in the day when I actually moved to Canada and whatnot, but like in the mid 90s when the second half of the 90s when the actual MLS started, oh my God, the difference is gigantically enormous. Like I don't even know how it's impossible to describe it. I know from Europe they snob it and I get it, but I think with time it'll be a little bit more appreciated. Obviously, it will never be on the levels of, and mostly I think it's based on the fact also of the time zone. So having us being so far, we're not able to compete, like in Champions League, the UEFA Champions League and whatnot.
Right.
I think that makes our biggest, that's where it hurts the most, I guess. But, it's still a difference. It's the biggest, at this point, I can say that it's the biggest league outside of Europe.
I would
too
agree with
far-fetched?
that. No, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, outside of Europe, I'm trying to think. Maybe the Brazilian, Argentinian leagues are bigger here, but they have a lot of history, right? So it's definitely different.
Yeah, and you get the expats too that are kind of in those different places that are paying attention to, especially because you just have such big names like Boca Juniors and all that stuff. But I could see it though, like viewership wise. I wonder if it's actually because of all the digital screens and stuff. But I don't know.
Well, no, viewership wise, I think Joe is right. Like South America is never gonna compete with MLS, just because of numbers, right?
Yeah.
But Joe, so you are admin of the page. Have you done any other type of? Tell us about more of your, I guess, your entrepreneurship, if I may say, with all your other type of experiences.
Well, this isn't really like, it's more of like a side thing, just like a hobby. So it's not really like a business. I mean, that'd be great if it was a business, because then I would be, I might not be in Toronto. Who knows? I might be living somewhere in, I don't know, Miami or
there you go.
Who knows? But that's basically what I do. I've done like pieces here and there for different blog sites such as Cult of Calcio, which is a famous Serie A blog page. And just stuff like that. I've just appeared on podcasts. Like I've been on the Calcio guys a few times, like you, Fabrizio.
That's right.
I've been on other podcasts. I've been on a couple other Serie A podcasts. So that's kind of what I do, just as a hobby type thing.
But that's the fun part too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we haven't really said anything about it yet, but you are actually a fan of a team in Serie A, which I don't really necessarily, and nothing against you, Joe, obviously, but I don't necessarily like to talk about that team, but again, nothing against you, but you are fan of what team?
I am a fan of Juve.
So one of the reasons also why we had you, besides the fact that I have, that, and I've been telling Matt that I wanted you as a guest for the longest. Is actually it comes perfectly right now because Genoa you might not know too much about him, but Genoa just announced his new sporting director, which is Ottolini, which Marco Ottolini, which was the direttore. No, he was like the loans manager for Juventus, mostly dealing with the loans, obviously, and the foreign teams and whatnot. But from your perspective, from your foreign perspective, from your Serie A now, Juventus fan perspective, etc., what do you see? What do you think about what happened and what's happening to Genoa?
I think it's definitely sad to see. I mean, obviously Genoa is the oldest team in Serie A, so it's definitely sad to see them be relegated. I don't remember. I was a kid basically when they got relegated last. Was it in 2008?
Oh God, I
They
don't want to remember those
would have
things,
been
but
like
2008 is when we came back to Serie A. 2006, 7, I think it was, or 7, 8.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
so it's
wait.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
it's definitely crazy to see. I mean, the last few seasons, you could definitely see generally they've been declining. Like I remember growing up in Genoa, they were at least a mid-table team, sometimes challenging for the Europa League. And then the last few seasons, I felt like, obviously with the exception of 2020, 2021, but I thought the last few seasons, they've just been declining a lot, which is a huge problem, right? Yeah, for sure.
That's LC.
I think the problem is for me, I think it's just money, right? I don't think he was the right owner at the right time for them. And actually, I like that American group, what are they called? 7-7 Partners now own Genoa. I think it's definitely going to take a lot of work, but I think you'll like the results at the end with Genoa. And I also like the fact that Genoa has a lot of young Italian players on loan, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's Fabry and I were talking about it too. We have a huge loan network, which probably is going to be cut down a little bit, but we still have a lot of young guys and a lot of young Italian players. And I think, you maybe as well see some of those guys going back to Serie C or Serie B or something like that. But hopefully we're able to kind of build organically after the next couple of seasons and not have to rely so much on going out and spending on players. But yeah, it's we're eagerly kind of looking both instances of excitement and maybe fear of like what this full season of 777 is going to look like. So
for sure,
Well, no, go on.
Sorry, you could go. Yeah, no, you could go. Sorry.
No, essentially, you're right. You were right on the spot. The fact of Preziosi, he had this huge enthusiasm in the first half of his 15-year spell or whatnot, where you saw the likes of Milito, Thiago Motta, the fact of going to all the way up in the league and whatnot. But then I don't know what happens there. That's what obviously one of the major problems for the Serie A is with these old style Italian management, which you still see a few left. I'm just for the likes of, for example, Lazio or whatnot, but and the smaller teams, and it can still work, but soccer is changing whether we like it or not. We have to adapt and we have to understand how things are changing. Look at the likes of Juventus, which are their publicly traded on the stock market. Yeah. So things like that are quote unquote new for Serie A. And for a lot of fans that they might not know, that means like a lot of things have to be transparent. And if they're not transparent, then you're going to have troubles. And no, you're right. Like then Preziosi, whether because of the soccer has changed or because he has lost that passion or he has lost that touch, he was still pulling out some talent here and there, like probably one every 50, right, Matt, or whatever. But nevertheless, he was able to pull out that whatever. Piontek. Obviously, and people, the last one, like for example, Piontek, that he did great at Genoa, and then touched Milan, and then like went, who is he now? Yeah. Or to the all of the last ones that have been taken actually from Juventus. From Cambiaso and Rovella. Like Rovella and Cambiaso are the two youth that you were talking about. And these are what we call Cantera, which is like the youth squad, from the kids. Like Cambiaso is a pure Genoese that grew up from neighborhoods and whatnot, that dreamt about one day going to Juventus, and look what happened for him. Mind you, he's loaned out again to Bologna and whatnot, but nevertheless, it's like for a kid, that's huge.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it definitely is. I mean, one point you want to say about transparency is one point I want to say about that is basically, I mean, I'm not trying to make an excuse for Preziosi, but it also doesn't help that the last decade, the people who run Serie A have done a horrible job of getting revenue to these clubs, especially broadcasting revenue. Like, did you guys hear the other 2 weeks ago came out from Adriano Del Monte, which, if you guys don't know, is a famous Serie A journalist based out of Milan. He was talking about how Serie A last season was it lost this huge deal in Qatar for beIN Sports because they didn't regulate this, Saudi Arabian piracy company. Basically, in other words, they took a deal that was less than the Qatari beIN Sports deal for broadcasting, and it just boggles my mind every time when I hear about Serie A's business dealings.
You're absolutely right, Joe. Like, that's one thing that just like wants to make my hair. I want to rip my hair out of my head. And essentially, I think they need a huge reorg. Forget about. Let's not even talk about the national team because
That's a different story.
Exactly, right. But when it comes, I thought they were planning to reorg because they were talking about this new company that they created from Lega Serie A and Serie B, I think was whatnot, to go out there and try to to sell the brand.
Yeah.
But also from your testimony that you just described and whatnot, obviously they're not doing a good job. And I think they should honestly give it to outsource it to someone that is capable in order to you read that everywhere, the amount of the last team placed in the EPL, the English Premier League, compared to the top, so Inter, the likes of Inter and Juventus, they're still not making as much.
It's crazy. It's crazy, and you wonder. Well, I think the Premier League, honestly, I feel like the owners too just don't take all this. You know what I mean? I feel like in the Premier League, the owners of these clubs also don't take the same BS, I'll say, as Serie A owners do. I feel like in the Premier League, a lot of these owners would, if they were like the Serie A owners, and a lot of them would just sell the clubs and be like, I'm not going to own your clubs. So sometimes you wonder, okay, where are these owners in Serie A? We need to push the league to get us more revenue.
True.
And even in Serie B, right? Like, I mean, if you were to compare to the money that championship teams make versus Serie B teams, it's probably not even close to the same. So it's just
peanuts.
Absolutely
peanuts. Not to mention, obviously, you're not that interested, Joe, obviously, but I'm still struggling, and I've talked about it with Matt and Stefano, which is not with us today, but he's our director in the background that he always stays in the podcast. But and they're both in the US, and Hellbiz, which is the partner for streaming in Italy, both Italy and the US. It's not here in Canada. I don't know how to watch Serie B here in Canada.
That's the problem.
I honestly don't.
Reddit streams, that's about it.
Yeah. I mean,
exactly.
It's not
it's like, it's hard. But anyways, hopefully one day they will outsource it, because I think that's the only way. Because if they continue this route, we're going to always be surclassed, outcast, whatnot, from the likes of La Liga, which is, now, okay, Real is still doing well, but Barcelona, hopefully they'll come back. But, lately they haven't been doing that much and so on. But, La Liga, in my opinion, is nothing to compare to Serie A. But obviously Serie A did not have, for the longest anyways, two teams like the levels of Real and Barcelona. But if you take those two teams out, I think Serie A has a lot more to offer compared to La Liga, especially even if you look at the numbers of goals and so on. Serie A has been showing quite a bit.
I agree. The quality is pretty good in Serie A. I wouldn't say, my argument is this subjectively, is that the Premier League for me is overall quality is better. But I think the thing is with La Liga is they get their broadcasting deals, right? They get their sponsorship deals, and that's why a lot of their clubs, even though they might not be super rich, I mean, a lot of their clubs are pretty good compared to a lot of Serie A clubs or even Serie B because they get good business deals.
I think there's like a part of this is like a first mover problem that the Premier League jumped on. And then you've got also, I mean, you just take English speaking and Spanish speaking people across the world. And then you've got the affinities of those two giants in Barca and Madrid that were there before anything else. But I mean, maybe there's hope. I think we've had this big wave of people rushing into the sport, and you're probably going to lean into more of those teams. I mean, you're starting to see more like, I never saw PSG shirts when I was a kid. They're obviously everywhere now because of what's going on with that investment, and that's not really a normal thing that you're going to see. But maybe we start to get more fans familiar with the game and they start kind of leaning into more some of these heritages. And I kind of agree with you guys too. Like, I feel like when you watch an average Serie A match, at least compared to La Liga, because I watched a handful of them with, I have ESPN Plus too in the States. It just seems like there's a little bit more sometimes going on there. And you just need to once you get that affinity with one team, I think it really brings you in. So
for sure. Definitely.
So what are you guys going to do with Cambiaso Rovella? Especially Rovella, actually, I know Cambiaso is going to be loaned out to Bologna. But what do you think is going to happen to Rovella? Do you know more insight that we might not know?
From what I've looked, I don't really see any rumors past what you may know. What I do think though is the way Juve, let's be honest, like the way Juve has been handling youth the last several years hasn't been great. So if I'm being honest, I'm trying to lower my expectations so they don't disappoint me, because I have a feeling they're just going to keep loaning these youngsters out and then they'll come back to Juventus and not be as good. I'm not trying to be negative, but
and not be as good. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Because I feel like what happens to Juventus youth, they tend to get loaned out to different teams, such as Genoa, and they play really good in Genoa, and then a few years after they come back to Juve and they're not as good anymore for some reason. And it's been like that the last 5 years, which I think is a bit of an issue. So I just hope they can actually be on the Juve squad and not loaned out. As much as you guys would like to see those players on your team.
I mean, it'd be great to have,
of course.
Yeah,
of course.
But I'm with you too. I feel like if they're really going to grow, they've got to be in that like pressure cooker environment. I think it's a little bit different with Juve than with some of the other clubs throughout Italy. So for
sure, and you even see like around like these big clubs. Okay, Bayern Munich, for example, Bayern Munich could spend just as much as pretty much any club in the world, but for the most part, they're very good at developing their youth or buying young players and developing them, which is something that Juve is definitely missing, and I wish Juve had more of.
Yeah. Bayern have the.
So what happened to Mattia? Delict.
Perin?
Delict.
No, Delict.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, what happened to him? I think the problem was Juve just wasn't playing the style he wanted. Like, he's probably used to playing on a team that has a majority of the possession and defending in a system like that, which is definitely different than the way Juve was playing under Allegri. So I honestly think that's the reason why he left. It was just like a tactical misfit.
That fit with Bayern is going to be ridiculous, though. I mean, I feel like he's going to be like perfect with how, like almost like a David Alaba like replacement immediately for them.
Sure, it's going to be crazy for that. Like, he's just going to be unbelievable. I mean, I wish it worked out at Juventus, but clearly it didn't. But it's just, Bayern, he's just going to be unbelievable, I think.
Yeah.
Well, the Bundesliga has lost quite a few talent here and there, obviously from different teams, but I guess a starlet from the defense side is not necessarily something to throw away, right?
Exactly. I agree.
Could be big.
But so again, Juventus is what it is. You said that you think that Serie A is obviously way higher compared to other leagues, and I'm with you on that. But why then is everybody complaining about the fact of the quality of Serie A is way lower compared to the rest? In your mind?
Well, I don't know if it's like I've seen people compare the quality, like complain about that, which I don't think that's true. I think it's just they do bad, like they're not good at doing business deals, and that's I think the thing that frustrates me with Serie A. Like, I mean, okay, you could say it's lower quality than it was in the 90s and early 2000s, but I don't think that's really a fair comparison because,
Yeah.
it's not even close to being the same. It's like saying, oh, Milan that won the Scudetto is going to be the same as Milan in, I don't know, the 80s and 90s under Sacchi. It's not the same.
Such a good comparison. Yeah, no one's going down.
It's not the same comparison. So there's no point of comparing the quality and saying, oh, the qualities went down or the quality is not as good as these other leagues because of the history of Serie A.
Yeah.
It's just more like it's more the business side that I'm frustrated about, not the actual quality side.
So going back to the business, do you think it's because soccer has changed so much that we still have the old ownership type of style of football and whatnot in Serie A, or what is it that is stopping us to be, again, that type of quality management and deals, strikers and whatnot?
Well, I think
besides the fact, obviously, of the TV rights, because obviously that's half of the battle, right?
For sure. No, I think it's definitely the PR in Serie A is not good compared to, the Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga. I mean, the discrimination happens everywhere, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But
that's true.
The way leagues handle it is
that's
just as important. The PR is just as important. And the one thing is their PR is bad with discrimination events. Like, I remember there was like this anti-racism mural that they had, and it was all over ESPN, and it had certain images on it. And I was just like blown away at how they were allowed to put a mural like that. Like, who okayed that? I'm not even going to describe the image, but like, it was just absolutely ridiculous. And
we're a little bit years behind, I guess, right?
Yeah, we're years behind in like that sense. And then we're also, I feel like they don't do good in international markets anymore. Like, I remember when I was a kid, like we used to have Milan and Inter come to Canada and play exhibition games. Now we don't get any. And I feel like their strategy is let's just target the US. That's kind of their foreign strategy now. They're trying to copy every other league and target the US. They're not looking at like, like a Brazil or an Argentina. They're just looking at the US as like the place where they can market their league.
I think it's such a weird thing too, because I was talking to Fabry about this. I've got a couple of friends from Canada as well. And it feels like there's so much more of like a foothold that Serie A has in Canada than it does in the US. And so why not make that bigger? I mean, they should, obviously I'm biased. I would love them to be in the US and watch matches there, but
yeah.
I don't know. I think you're spot on. Like you got to think about, I mean, that's basically what the MLS did, right? Like they went, okay, we're not going to be soccer for everybody. We're going to focus on the soccer fanatics first and get them to kind of care about their local team just at least a little bit. So that's a good point.
It's interesting. It's going to be a tough game altogether. I think there's way more foreign ownership, and I think that's going to have some pressure also in La Liga as well. Yeah. And hopefully, the more that happens, and more that stirs the Lega Serie A to be a little bit more competitive or to go in a different direction to what they've been used to be doing up until now, anyways. But this is for different type of people at different seats compared to us just trying to talk this through too, right?
It does feel like
for sure.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
And I feel like sorry to interrupt, but I feel like it's like, for example, I feel like they got too complacent probably in 2010, 2012-ish, because I feel like, the Serie A used to just market itself type thing. Like in the 90s and 80s when you had like a Baggio, you had a R9, you had a Maradona, you had all these stars, Maldinis and that. They just kind of I felt like the players literally just marketed Serie A because of how good they were. But now it's just like, I feel like they've, what's the word? They've rested on their laurels, and I think it's came to bite them badly. And the Premier League has now emerged as the richest league in the world by far.
Well, Joe, actually, you're dead right on that one. Italy is quite, in being, half Italian essentially, but Italians are quite famous, and they'll never admit it. But the truth is, they'll always try to get the best out of what they have without doing and improving and investing into it.
Exactly.
And that's detrimental, especially in times like right now, which we don't have much talent out there, and you can't bank on it. Like, who are you going to bank on right now?
Well, that's the thing. We don't have, yeah, exactly. Like,
yes, come on.
Yeah. We have like a lot of talent, but like you said, we don't have like marketable talent. Like La Liga several years ago had Messi, Neymar, Suarez, and CR7, so that was pretty marketable, right? But we haven't had, you're right, a marketable talent in a while.
Juve tried, obviously, but has failed a little. I guess I'm going to call that as a semi-failure. Semi.
Yeah, it's like half and half, I would say.
Yeah. That's why I said semi, because it was not a super failure, but still, it was not necessary, a good approach. And I think, personally, they're still aiming towards older players rather than, if I don't know if I have the rights to say this, being a fan of a team that just got relegated, but nevertheless. I mean, obviously, you always look up to Juve is always a point of reference for all the teams. Obviously, there's like a Inter and Juve bash, but and it's I was super pumped to see AC to come back, thinking about their glories from the olden days, as you mentioned, but and stop with that duo right between the two of them, but and especially that, sorry, Joe, but that dreadful 9 years straight. You would be happy about
I love
that,
it,
but from a Serie A perspective and internationally speaking, that's not necessarily a good thing. So, but I mean, good Di Maria, good Pogba, but is Serie A now becoming MLS, which they're hiring old players that are not to retirement, but I'm just saying, I'm not saying that's the truth because I don't think it is, but why is that happening?
Well, I think the problem is too with Juve is, again, they have this like older Italian style philosophy of us. We're going to defend hard. We're going to be gritty. We're going to put 10 men behind the ball and counterattack.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's tougher with younger players now because a lot of the style of football in general, I find, has changed. Like a lot of younger players aren't developed to park the bus for 90 minutes the way that they used to be able to. And it's not a slight against younger players. It's just the style's different now. I mean, defenders now don't just defend. They do a bunch of other stuff. Midfielders don't just win the ball in the midfield. They do a bunch of other stuff. So they're definitely just developed different. And I think that doesn't, what's the word? It doesn't align with Juve's philosophy, I don't think.
So do you think Juve's philosophy is better than Atalanta's or vice versa?
Well, listen, I think Atalanta's philosophy is good. The problem is, I think it's better play style wise nowadays. But I think the problem with Atalanta is they don't have the money, right? So, if you play Atalanta's style, which is a pretty modern way, I would say, of playing, like they're very ruthless in their attack, to say the least. But the problem is, like, Atalanta does not have the money to get the defenders to play in a system like that. You see a team like Liverpool, who I would say is a similar style. They have the money to get like a Van Dijk or some world-class defenders to help them, right? But the problem is Atalanta has a good style. They just don't have the money to back it up, especially on the back line.
Joe, I'm going to take that comment as Gasperini is as good a manager as Klopp if he had the same amount of money. So I'm running with that one. I know it's not what you meant, but
similar.
Fan.
It's definitely, I would say, like, Klopp it's not as different as people think. I would say Klopp is better because he's a bit more versatile.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Gasperini's just, I think it's just because he's Italian. He's that like older stubborn type where even though he plays a really exciting and modern philosophy, he's stubborn and he's not very tactically versatile.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Klopp's a bit more versatile, so I would edge him. But yeah, I mean, if Atalanta had the money, I think they could be a Champions League contender.
Absolutely. I agree. We miss Gasperini, but that's old story, and we should not look in the past, as you said that before.
We
can learn from the
picture
past.
down and like pretending to not look at it again, like that meme, like Wolverine looking at like a picture.
Maybe he'll win a new challenge in a year or two. You never know.
You never know.
Also, with our new coach, like Blessin, that Serie A has only seen like for a few games. It was a fresh breath, it was a fresh coming, new type of approach. He surprised quite a few teams when he first started with those 7-8 ties streak with the conditions of the roster that he had. So let's hope that, this Serie B also brings him a little bit more fire under his seat. And then when we do come back up to Serie A, it's going to be another surprise for Serie A anyways.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you.
We can. Sorry, I think just interrupt. I think that Genoa, I think definitely has the potential to get back up. I think that definitely should be their objective. But I will say this about Serie B: when you go down to Serie B, it doesn't matter how much money you have, unless you're Juve, of course. You lose so much money.
Thanks for rubbing that in, Joe. Thanks for rubbing that in.
You lose so much money going down to Serie B that you're basically equal with every other team there. And like, for example, Brescia, they lost probably so much money going down to Serie B. And now look at them, right? They didn't get to Serie A the next season, right? So It's definitely what's the word? It's definitely the Hunger Games in Serie B there.
We were saying that also in the first half. Essentially, this season of Serie B, as many has compared it to an A2 per se, for the amount of teams that are out there, of the likes of Brescia, Parma, now also coming up Bari, Palermo, Venezia, Cagliari, Genoa. Like you name it, like there's so many in Pisa which they were in the runs also to come up and whatnot. It's like there's so many excellent teams out there, all hungry for that game.
For sure.
Anyways, I wanted to thank you very much for being our guest. That was tremendous and great outlook on certain aspects of not only Serie A, of Italian leagues and whatnot, also from an international perspective, also of our youth, to see how you mentioned about the fact that we should work a lot more on our youth, shouldn't we? And
definitely.
Let's don't open that door about the Italian team. So unless you have anything to add, Matt?
No, I think, Joe, wonderful conversation. Hopefully we'll see Juve in the not too distant future back in Serie A between Genoa and Juventus. But until then, I guess we say, is it arrivederci? Is it the proper use of goodbye in this
Absolutely.
case?
just remind us again how people can reach out to you in the on social media.
Oh, so you can reach out to me on my Instagram at Calcio Fan Blogs. You can reach out to me on Twitter at Calcio Fan Blogs 1. You can also message me on my Facebook page, Calcio Fan Blogs. And you can also
Awesome.
check out my blog website, which is calciofanblogs.com. So be sure to check all that
Beautiful.
out.
Definitely, we will all do that. Thank you again, Joe, for your participation, and we'll definitely chat soon for our return anyways in Serie A. Anyways.
For sure.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. And it was a pleasure being on.
The honor was ours, definitely. Thanks again, and for us, Forza Genoa.
Forza Genoa.
You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genoani Si Resta. Thank you for listening and see you next week.